G'day and Kaya, and welcome to the Australians Teach English podcast, the podcast by language learners, with language learners, for language learners. My name is Glenn, and I'm the owner of Australians Teach English. And if you would like to support this show, you can go to our Patreon at patreon.com/Australians Teach English, and you can have an input on our creative process and also gain access to exclusive content and all the rest. And at the moment, it is about 8:30 in the morning, and I really need some brekkie. Well, I'm going to need some brekkie after this interview, I'm pretty sure. And who better to talk about this term of brekkie and food than, well, she's become a little bit of a celebrity from last year's Masterchef. Keyma, welcome to the show, Keyma.
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem. First off, congratulations on reaching the top four in MasterChef of the fans and favorites season 14. Is that correct? Is that the season
Yeah,
that
that's
you are in?
correct. Thank you. Thank you. It was crazy.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I've always watched the show and I've thought, oh, I don't think I could do this. It's
It
an
takes a lot of
enormous.
nerves, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And probably very similar to what you've actually experienced in coming to Australia as well. So can you tell us a little bit about your story and how long you've been in Australia, where you are from, all these sorts of things?
Well, Glenn, I'm from Venezuela, this little country in Latin America. And I'm from a little town in Venezuela that's close to Amazonas. I came to Australia 12 years ago with my husband and my daughter. And obviously, it was a really, really crazy ride. Just from making the decision to overcoming all the challenges to take coming to a new country. You in Venezuela, we actually learn English as a second language, but you come to Australia and you realize that you don't know nothing.
Yeah.
It's like so different, and it's the accent and all that, so obviously getting used to all of that and getting used to the culture as well, it was so different as families, people, everyone. It's the different ways of behaving and relating with each other, and it was such an interesting, still an interesting, I guess, process. But to me, it was so difficult at the beginning. It took me like 6 months to adapt.
Mm.
And
But
obviously leaving family behind and all that
yeah,
is not
not
easy.
easy. And you came to Australia with a young child as well, which makes it
Yeah.
even tougher. And so you came as a family. You are an engineer, is that correct? Or your background was in engineering, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. Yeah. I'm an industrial engineer and
Yeah.
I used to practice at home. And then when I came here, I decided to stay at home to support the family, obviously, our migration process. My child was 1 year old at the time. So it was a pretty tough process. It wasn't not just about going working, and it was about, I guess, for me, family is the most important thing. So it was more about, being there for my husband and my daughter to support all what we were going through.
Yes. Yes. But one thing that struck me, and even just from the 5 minutes that we were talking before we started recording here, is how it always sort of something always came back towards food. So, so can you tell me about this? How you were able to center yourself or balance yourself by using food as an outlet?
Well, obviously, Glenn, I feel that food has a strong connection with family and with your roots. And when you move places, I think there's always something comforting about just making, family recipes, I guess, remembering mom and grandma from all those family recipes, and maintaining as well the culture at home. I think once my second child comes, I felt I needed to to have Venezuela present at home. All like it's you feel that sense of you love being here and you want to, I guess, fit in the country, but at the same time you don't wanna get rid of your costumes. And you want your children to grow up with that sense of, feeling, the Venezuelan, I guess, sabor sense. And I remember my son, he was 2 years old, and all he wanted, it was arepas, which is our Venezuelan bread, I guess.
Oh, that's one thing that I have to clarify. Are
Oh,
arepas,
sorry.
are arepas Venezuelan or Colombian?
Well, there's such a dilemma. I feel that I'm such an advocate for Latin food as a whole. We are a community, and I don't like taking sides.
That's a good
Sorry.
answer.
But there's Venezuelan arepas and there's Colombian arepas, like everything. Like you will find empanadas that are very, I guess, regional.
Argentinian, yeah.
So I think Argentinian empanadas are different than Venezuelan empanadas. So I guess taking sides and saying who is it, it's from Latin America. It's a Latin American preparation, but they do it differently. If you go to Colombia, it's a different preparation than Venezuelan arepas.
That's the perfect answer, because that way I'm not going to get, because I'm not going to get death threats from Venezuelans or Colombians, which is fantastic.
Please don't. I hate when people start, fighting over the arepas and the harina pan. And I mean, we all love arepas. Why don't we just eat arepas?
So speaking of arepas and brekkie, what would be the typical brekkie in Venezuela?
Arepas always. Arepas. I think if you ask any family in Venezuela, arepas is the most common one. Yeah. It could be because it's such a versatile bread. I guess if people doesn't know what's arepas, it's like a flat bread made out of maize or cornmeal, and then it's like a pita pocket. You just open it and you fill it with anything. So imagine cheese or whatever leftovers you have, scrambled eggs, or just a side with even avocado, salad. I love arepas with salad. So it's such a versatile bread that you can have it any time of the day. We can even have them for lunch.
Yeah, I mean, you can dress them up and eat them sort of anytime, really. I guess if people don't know,
you can make them sweet. There's so many, like it's I don't know, it's our most typical food in Venezuela, I guess.
Absolutely. And I think for people that aren't aware of arepas, they're probably like a really fancy toast. I guess that would be a much better toast. That's probably all I can do.
With a delicious toast.
With a delicious toast, and you can fill it with cheese.
And it's gluten-free, which is amazing.
What's that? Sorry?
It's gluten-free.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go.
So one of my friends when we went to Masterchef, she's celiac. And once I taught her how to do arepas, she loved it.
Oh, wow.
She loved it. Yeah.
So what are the differences between the typical Aussie brekkie and the Venezuelan brekkie?
I guess one of the main things is the presence of arepas instead of bread. But for example, if we see the brekkie with the lot, the one that you guys have with eggs and baked beans, and imagine you substitute the baked beans for the black beans we have, which is like a stew, more like a savory kind of beans. But we still have the same, like, fried eggs, beans, sometimes plantains in there. I guess the difference is just the ingredients. I mean, we work with the ingredients we have in our land as well. So, and it has a lot to do with indigenous, I guess, influences as well. So, for example, the arepa is something that it comes from the Aboriginals in Venezuela, and then we adopted it as our main custom.
Yes.
But I also feel that in Australia, I don't know, it's a lot more simpler, like a lot more simple. The breakfast, for example, the toast with avocado.
Yeah.
I will have arepa with avocado. It's the same, but it's just
I was
Not
just,
just with
I,
avocado, you will add a lot more into
I,
that arepas.
I hate to give Masterchef some advice, but my advice for making arepas, you could make Australian arepas with Vegemite and
Oh
smashed
wow.
avo. That I
I
have
don't
done
know.
that.
I'm still getting used to Vegemite, honestly. I've been,
It works well with
trying
cheese.
out
It works well with
Vegemite and
cheese arepas. I'll give you the
yeah,
tip.
I'm not too sure. I think Vegemite is a really, really strong flavor for me. But
Salty, too
if I
salty.
must say, the first time I saw like a Vegemite scroll, I think on the supermarket, I
Hmm.
thought it was one of our golpeados sticky buns,
Oh
and I was
yeah,
like, oh my god! And it was savory. It wasn't
yeah.
sweet.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
when you go to South America, I used to play a trick on people, and I would give them the Vegemite to try, and they would ask
the
me,
Vegemite scroll. Yeah,
is it sweet?" And I say, "Yes, it's sweet." And then they go and take a
it's
bite,
not,
and it's the
and
saltiest thing
it's
that they
so
have ever
so
tasted.
salty. No, I was like, oh my god, golpeados, and no, it
Mm.
wasn't.
So like Vegemite on toast would be like a really classical Australian brekkie, really.
Vegemite on toast. Wow.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think we like Vegemite on toast here.
nah.
But I've tried Vegemite on like the caramel. It
What?
masks all the bitterness and, and the saltiness of the Vegemite.
And then we might have avo or smashed avo on toast as well. And
Oh,
so
that I love.
yeah,
Avocados always.
yeah.
There's such a Latin American, I guess, is very present in all our
Mm.
food. So when I saw that Australians love avocados as much as we do, yes, I'm sold.
Well, that was the interesting thing in my last year in Argentina. I started seeing places that would actually sell smashed avo on toast, and they would actually write it as smashed avo
I smash avo. Wow,
on toast.
yeah. Well, that's the interesting thing about I guess cross-cultural um in terms of food, no? When you can import something from another country and make it yours as well. And that's what happens constantly in Latin America. And that's a phenomenon that is happening constantly in all the world. When something, becomes popular, it's delicious and people know it. And then they just really import it to their own, I guess, menu.
Like Uruguay, they claim everything is
Yes,
theirs. Chipa,
like
arepas, mate.
Colombians and Venezuelans constantly saying that their empanadas are theirs and then arepas are ours. No, but I think that's the beauty of food, that you can see that it's evolving constantly. That you go, for example, if we go to Peru, that when they had that Japanese influences,
Mm,
and then they have a whole movement called Nikkei, and it's just Peruvian flavors with Japanese techniques,
yes,
and it's part of Peru. You won't see it anywhere in the world, but it had all the influences from Japan. So
absolutely.
I think instead of saying, oh, it's Japanese or it's Peruvian, at the end it's embracing how much food can just, become something different and amazing if you allow it to.
Absolutely. And that's one of the reasons why Peruvian food is so highly regarded and highly
Just
rated
delicious.
everywhere. Yeah,
Yeah.
because it's just very
Yeah.
good. And so we've got some typical Australian foods for brekkie. We've got Vegemite, we've got smashed avo, we've got wheat bix, we've got bacon and eggs. These sort of classic brekkie foods. Now, when you got to Australia, what did you notice about the food in Australia? What was surprising for you?
I guess for me, one of the things it was getting used to how they call certain things as well. Like it was everything was so a little avo and brekkie and snacks and sangya and choki. I don't know. There were so many, I don't know, words that I was like, well, I don't know what they're talking about. I'll try it, but I don't know what is going on. And the other thing is a lot more simple and healthy, and in terms of, I mean, fresh, I guess it, and not complicated. I feel that the main difference with, I guess, Latin American food and Australian food is that we take long hours to make a stew and put a lot of effort into making a homemade meal. And I feel that Australian food is a lot more straight to it.
Yes.
Not all, but in terms of, for example, breakfast, I feel that it's very much, you know, you have all the proteins you need, like sausages and eggs and bacon and all the proteins you need in a packed breakfast, and it's delicious still. Yeah.
But what about finding like Venezuelan food or Latin American food when you came to Australia? Were you surprised that you could actually go to the supermarket and buy what you actually needed?
Well, at the time, there wasn't many actually. There wasn't many. For me, I had to go a bit further, like just go to markets and specialized stores to find some of the ingredients.
Mhm.
Nowadays, I'm pleased that there's a Mexican aisle.
which
One.
which they put all the Latin American
That's the
things in.
classic. Yeah, that's like where we put all of the Latins, Mexican.
Yeah, you are Mexican, didn't you know?
Yes. But at least I can find some more ingredients and
Mhm.
I can play with it. I'm still, when I want something really specialized, I still have to go to some of these, delis.
Mhm.
Sometimes Italian delis cater for like a small South American, like I don't know, shelf, and you can find
Yeah.
some ingredients. But
Okay.
then there were so many ingredients that they were natural to, like vegetables that we can't find in the supermarket. So for
Uh,
me, it was about adapting as well. I mean, you get to adapt and you get to think of outside the box and how can I just bring these ingredients and take these ingredients and make something that it reminds me of home, I guess.
mhm.
So at the beginning, I was a bit reluctant to cook a Aussie actually. and to and to adopt, I guess, Aussie customs
Mhm.
in terms of, for example, for us, lunch has to be a proper lunch, like a very, very big lunch. Is
Mhm.
where we pack all the energy, and I feel that that's dinner for Australians. And lunch here is a lot more lighter. It's like a sandwich or I don't know, like a salad, and
Yes.
for us, it's not. And then yeah, at the beginning I used to send my husband just like a lunch pack with beans and rice and
He would have he would have
shredded
had he would have
cheese.
had all of his friends stealing the food. That
Oh my God, yeah, he said that everyone was like, it smells delicious, and then his friends were having tuna, like
yeah.
a tuna can with
The tuna
corn on
sandwich.
top. Yeah, like very more much simpler as well.
Mm.
And now we kind of embrace it as well because you understand that there's the way of doing it is because of the lifestyle in here and it's
Mhm.
adapted to the country and the seasons and the weather. Like it has a reason. But
Mhm.
for us at the beginning, it was tough to say, oh, I can't have like if I don't eat rice and beans, I was like, I'm hungry. I'll be hungry all day.
Uh-huh.
So I guess with the years you adapt to the country and you adopt certain anything that makes sense to you.
Yeah, and so this obviously was a formation in the process of why and probably how you became successful on MasterChef as well. Because tell us a little bit about the process of getting on the show to begin with. How was it that you got on the show?
So to begin with, I was a super fan. So obviously, I used to watch and see all those home cooks competing. For me, it was such a strange sighting because in my country there wasn't anything like it. There wasn't a competition that will, take home cooks and put it all together and test them. And I was a really avid home cook. I love cooking since I was little, but then watching them, I guess, flourish and take their home skills and then take them to the next level for me was amazing. I was like,
Mhm.
wow, this is incredible. So I got hooked with the program immediately when I watched it. I stopped watching for a while, but then I started watching it again, and obviously, you can see that season after season, the home cooks get better and better, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
wow, this is amazing. And since the beginning, I've always wanted to be part of the show,
Mm-hmm.
but then I was feeling that I was missing out, like I was gonna miss out because they were getting better, and I was still the home cook.
Mm-hmm.
But then I guess my kids grew older, and they started saying to me that I could be there as well. We watched the show one day, and they were calling out for home cooks to apply, and my kids started just encouraging me to take the the leap. And I was like, oh, this is so scary. I've never seen anyone Venezuelan. I've hardly seen Latin cook
Mm.
represented in the show. Mostly Southeast Asian, and I guess Australian, modern Australian, and Italian, but not Latin. And I was really scared about putting myself out there. But I just decided to go for it, just apply. I made my application, made a really homemade video, just talking, almost trembling.
So
And
what did you make
then
on your
I got
homemade? What did you make on your homemade video?
so I made I applied two times actually. So the first one I made like cheesecake, Venezuelan cheesecake that is made with
Ah.
hard cheese instead
Mm-hmm.
of cream cheese. So it's like a very
Mm-hmm.
Creole cheesecake with guava.
Mm-hmm.
And that was my first one. It was horrible. It was so horrible. I can't even imagine like bad lining. However, I got called that first time, and I had an interview and all that, and I didn't, make the cut. And the second time I decided to go and have a go at four different recipes, and I just made, little snippets of what I can do, and then showcase more of my skills. And then I made several dishes, and even made gnocchi, and made some sweets, and made I guess like a collage of what I could do. And
Mm-hmm.
then I got called back. I auditioned. It was super hard, like the hardest audition I think they've ever had. This time they didn't televise it, but we had like four different cooks with the judges as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they told us there was gonna be 12 only. So from all I guess the auditions they did this time around, it was only 12. And when I got called out that I was between those 12, I was like, oh, this is so amazing, scary. I was like, yeah,
Yeah. Well, I think even doing that's a huge achievement because basically you were competing against people that had already done it before,
yeah,
knew the process, probably had a lot more skills than what you did, and you were actually in the last two of the sort of the new contestants as well.
yeah,
So
yeah. No,
so so
it was like I don't know about the rest, and I don't want to undermine all the other seasons, obviously.
mm,
But obviously, I felt that I had to push a lot harder. Like there was
mm,
a lot of studies behind doors. Like I had
mm,
to come back because I was seeing these people just doing their magic, and I was like, oh my god, I'm still a and obviously at the beginning, all I wanted was to be there. For me, that first episode, it was like, I made it. That's it.
mm.
If I leave, I'm done. I love it.
And in the end,
I made the
you were on
judges. I
what
was in
fifth?
Masterchef. That's fine.
In the end, you were on what 50 something episodes? Is that
It
correct? You
was
know?
61. So I think I
Oof.
made it to the 58 or something. Yeah.
Oof. So that's
Yeah.
a lot of work. So I guess
Yeah.
I guess what people probably don't see, I mean, they only see an hour and a half on the screen or whatever. But how much actual work would that mean for you
Oh
each
my God,
those
it's
episodes?
huge. It's huge. Obviously, I can't give you much insights of some of the
No.
stuff that
Yeah.
happened, but everyone knows. I mean, it takes almost 12 hours since we, get to the studio, we prepare for it. Then there's a lot of waiting around as well. Then
Yeah,
we
the
cook.
boredom and then the utter stress.
yeah, well, stress, but we take advantage of it and we study. Sometimes there's so much stress that you have to stretch and exercise and do. Yeah, I used to dance between my waiting times. I used to just take my dancing shoes, my sneakers, and go and have a Zumba session so I can just get rid of the nerves. But it helped a lot because there's a
Mhm.
lot of mental pressure as well. I mean, you're constantly thinking about bringing something new, knowing you're learning something new as well, trying to cope with, especially as I said, that season we were competing with all these people that had restaurants. On that for me, it was like I need to learn all the basics and I need to show more. Every time I was just trying to push myself to show more.
Mhm.
And obviously it was constantly learning. Like
Mhm.
everyone that was around me, I was looking at them, looking at what we're doing. And then obviously in my mind at the same time I was a bit struggling with because of the language. Like I was constantly, like, the first few weeks I had headaches at the end of the day
Mhm.
because it was all day English. I was like, I haven't been in this environment before, and I had to constantly think, translate in my mind, and respond sometimes. And he came to my bench and he was talking to me, and I was like, I don't know what to say.
I don't know what you're
My
talking
recipe in
about.
my mind is in Spanish, and I'm trying to talk to you in English. So it's
So,
so funny. It was so
so
funny.
that is kind of my next question really is how is being in the MasterChef kitchen like going to a different country?
Obviously, I guess, and I'm not saying that I struggle much more than the rest, but for me it felt like it's inside because it's like you're in two worlds. Like as I
Mm.
said, sometimes my recipes and my foundations of cooking were in my mind stuck in Spanish, and I had to take out all of that, put it in there, and then explain it in English live, I guess. Like when they came to my bench, I had to translate it, and sometimes I couldn't find the words. And
Because
some of them
probably
they wanted, you have to speak in
your
Spanish,
associ
and I can't.
yeah, and your
It's
associations
so
with food,
difficult.
your associations
Yeah.
with food are hardwired into Spanish.
Yeah, that, like, I learned it. It's such like, and there's so, like, even the words between, like, Spanish countries, like Spanish speaking countries,
Hmm.
are different. Like the way we say some stuff. So I was trying to, when I did one of the dishes that it was hallacas, people, it was like, it's a tamal, it's a hallaca,
Yeah,
it's like a, I don't know, we call it hallaca as well.
yeah,
So
yeah.
and you're thinking as well, how do, because I'm trying to represent not only Venezuela but Latin Americans. So how do I present it in a way that people relate to it as well? So it was, while the show was progressing for me, was how do I think about how to present this to the world that people relate to it and take it on board. Not only
Mm.
Latins but Australians. How do they actually? So there was a lot of me behind the scenes thinking in terms of, so after I finished the first week and I was like, oh, I made it. I made it through to the following week.
Yeah,
I thought, okay, right, okay, but you have to put your pants on and kind of embrace it. And then I had to think, how do I translate all of this knowledge into something that people at homes are able to relate to and understand, to, so every time the judges come to my bench I can explain it in a way that people is, oh, okay, Kim is doing this, or they understand. And obviously as well, the ingredients that we found in the pantry not always were
hmm.
the ones I wanted to use, or
So
the ones that,
yeah,
yeah,
you couldn't find what you actually what you wanted
yeah.
or needed. So
Mm.
I mean that is a lot like learning a language. Like when you're trying to talk to someone and you're trying to find the right words and you can't find it.
Mm.
So
Yeah.
how else was being in the MasterChef kitchen like learning another language?
Oh, wow. I guess it's related to culture and cultural, and because it was as well for me the first time I was in a environment where all of the rest were not only from Australian background, but they were from a different background, but they lived in Australia or they were born in Australia. So I felt I was one of the only ones that were migrants, along with a couple more, but all of them, the others, they were Vietnamese, but I was born here, so they still had all the manners of an Australian
Mm.
culture. And I find it a bit hard sometimes to relate and communicate and the way you behave. It's just different. I couldn't understand, for example, I'm really bad at understanding sarcasm. And I feel that sometimes Australian language it's filled with it constantly.
And especially
Actually,
with like a with
yeah, and you cannot read
deadpan
it, and
expressions. Yeah.
the jokes are different. And for me, it had to okay. Oh, I will laugh like I mean it after everyone else because I wouldn't
You
understand that.
realize.
It wasn't the language. It was the social connection and the past experiences that weren't related to what they were telling me. You know what I mean? Like it's not I didn't grow up with that context of socialization.
Okay.
And then to me like this is outside, like behind the scenes.
Mhm.
That relationship with all the contestants for me was quite hard, quite difficult. I had to overcome all of that as well.
Mhm.
And obviously it had to do with people also understanding and embracing me as a diverse person in an environment that they knew that was really uncomfortable for me
Mm.
from a social perspective.
So it was more than the actual. It was more than the actual language itself. It was
Of course.
it was everything that went with it.
Completely. Yeah. So for me, you imagine those, and I don't even know how I did it so for so long because I was like some days were so hard emotionally because of all that. You sum up, not understanding completely what people are saying, your peers are saying, and then people judging you constantly, and then coming up with a recipe and then receiving back feedback. It was like a completely like harsh environment in
Yeah,
that sense.
and it's something you only really understand once you go and live in another country because you spend all day working in your second language and you go home and you just think, oh, I just want to watch TV in my own language, just want to turn my brain off for a minute, and that's all I want to do. And you sort of don't realize how much of an impact that has on you until you actually do go and live in another country.
That's
Because
completely true.
one
Yeah.
thing that you sort of say to yourself, oh, I'm just not going to learn, I'm just not going to use English or Spanish once I go to another country, and that's just not realistic.
No, it's not
Because
an option. It's actually
no,
not an option.
because after a while you
It's
just stop.
so
Everything
you
just
have to
bounces off.
get on board. But for
Mm.
me, obviously, it's if I'm speaking to anyone that wants to learn English, that's the best.
Yeah.
Just go in and jumping yourself. Just going to as an English speaking country or either way, like other way, like just going to Spanish speaking country and immerse yourself in the social, environment
Yes.
and go out and then and speak to people, even if they don't understand you learn. I was For me, for example, going to Masterchef improved my English immensely because I was whenever I did it wrong, and some people will say to me, "Oh, it's this way," or they will say in the right way. I was listening to them. I was actually seeing their lips, and I was actually copying what they were saying. It's the best way to learn.
And also, I'm not sure if it is actually this way or if it's much more competitive behind the scenes than what it looks like on camera. But at least on camera, they sort of present quite a collegial, supportive environment. Is that how it's
Yes.
yes and no?
Obviously there's
Did,
competition.
yeah.
There's a lot of I guess companionship. Like everyone is very supportive and all that, but there's always, that feeling of you need
Egos.
to do.
I'm better
Yeah.
than you, kind of. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I
Well,
imagine so.
especially at the beginning. I feel at the end, you get to know people more. And
Mhm.
and then you become a lot more close together. And then there's a
Mhm.
lot of, we help each other. But
Mhm.
at the beginning, I felt, especially that season, I felt there was a separation between favorites and fans. And
Yeah,
then we were all scared of the favorites, and the favorites. The, there was
but
that
then
feeling.
towards the end, it seemed to me like you had you developed a good bond with Billy, at least. That seemed to.
Yeah, no, I think with all of them in a different way. Obviously, everyone has a different personality, but we all develop a strong connection. I guess after the Tasmania trip, it was a special, I guess, connection for us, because we got to, I guess, be together for more time. I think we went out for dinners, we visited some places in Tasmania, and then it's those experiences that enrich a relationship, I guess, and then you get to meet someone at a deeper level.
Yes.
So I felt, obviously, it was forming a friendship. Obviously,
Yes.
it was a friendship group. So everyone that left after that point, it was really heartbreaking, really heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And I'm such a sook. I was crying for every one of them since the first one that left, because I think that that's my Latin nature. I just
Passion.
get to connect to them deeply since the beginning. That's another thing that I feel is different in Australians, that they're a bit more, I guess, cautious.
Yes.
And there's a bit of, you need more time to warm up into people, and I'm not. The first day I meet you, I'm like, I love you, come to my
house. The other thing that I noticed, and you spoke to this a little while ago, and it's one thing that does surprise people when they come to Australia. Like, the Masterchef kitchen is kind of like a little bit of a microcosm of Australian culture in general. Yes, people are born here in Australia, but their parents might have been born in Vietnam or China or India or wherever it was. So people develop different kinds of accents, and the variety of accents that you experience. Like, I think you were talking about Aldo before, who was from the Philippines, I think. And
Aldo is Italian, yeah.
There was someone else from the Philippines, but I can't remember.
John, yeah.
And so the accents that you hear surprise people when they come to Australia. How did you find that challenging when you were in the kitchen?
When I came to Australia, it was completely shocking. I feel the only accent I've heard was a bad Latin accent of American English in my life before I came to Australia. But then you hear, like, the Asian accent is so different as well, and then the Indian, and it's not that it's hard, and especially Australian accent as well, and you have to get used to it, and in a polite way as well, because I know I have an accent as well. So it's about, being empathic to other people as well, and understanding, and we're all in the same situation. We're all trying.
Absolutely. And even the person you were, well, in the final two of the contestants, with Daniel from Darwin, was
oh my God, yeah.
And he spoke like this, because everyone in Darwin, if you open your mouth in the north of Australia, the flies come in, and so
honestly, I think the first few weeks we didn't understand each other. Like, he will talk to me and I will talk to him, and we were like blank. I don't know what you're saying, and then, okay, we're the same, and that's it.
So even though he is Australian and his family is here and all the rest, he has a completely different accent and a different sound to most other Australians that you will hear. So this presents enormous challenges, and people completely. And when people are in professional environments, especially in kitchens or restaurants or whatever, you are going to hear all of these different accents. And so this is not something that you can easily prepare for. All I can suggest is be patient and try and listen to as many different accents as you possibly can. Have you got in
developing an ear in listening and I guess exposing yourself to that, not being afraid of that, and not being afraid to ask as well. Like, when I didn't understand anything, I was like, pardon, just, can you repeat? And I'm sorry, it just and then people just slow down for me. And even though it feels like, it's rude or something, if you don't say, you won't get to learn from the experience as well from. And I feel like 46% of the population is a migrant here,
Yeah,
or
pretty
from a
much. Yeah.
different background.
I think it's
So
something like
they should be used to it anyway.
absolutely. I think it's something like 2/3 of Australians were either born overseas or their parents were, or both parents were
Yeah,
born overseas. So
yeah,
so it's a huge number.
yeah. So
And
I don't think anyone, people might be used, even for Australians must be difficult as well to, work with all these different accents as well.
yeah, I think it's just something that
So,
we don't realize that we do. But
mm,
we do have to deal with it.
yeah. And
And
that's something really incredible that I love about Australia, that this tolerance about, the diversity that they have in the country as well, because
mhm,
people make an effort to just, understand you. And I notice, and I don't feel bad about it when
mhm.
people say, okay, let me just slow down, or take off my Aussie accent and speak in a neutral Australian. So I can understand, because if
Yeah.
you start speaking to
Yeah.
me in the slang,
Yeah,
I don't
but what is this neutral Australian accent? It doesn't really
Well,
exist, does it?
you speak pretty neutral. I've heard people speaking with the slang, and it takes me a while to,
Mhm,
and so fast as well, very fast. So
mhm,
for people that is learning English, it takes time to get used to the rhythm and and
mm,
the wording and as I said, the particular, I guess, social sentences. So I guess all the sentences that are attached to a social environment that we're not
mhm.
in. So it's difficult to understand it because of the context.
And so if you could give one piece of advice to someone coming to Australia or learning English, what would it be?
For me, it's exposure. So if you come into Australia, I am I I committed the mistake when I came here to stay in my home for 2 years.
Mhm,
Scared, so scared of going out, because I know English and I couldn't speak fluently. When I came here, I knew English and I couldn't speak fluently. I was so nervous, so scared. But it wasn't until I started going out, speaking to the librarian, speaking to just saying, hi, how's the weather? And listening. For me, it was about exposing myself to the experiences that enrich your language in many ways.
mhm,
Going, for me, I didn't have the time to go to a meetup, but just meeting up with friends that are not, you know, your Latin or your own community, because that's what a common mistake as well, that people come here and then just stay within their community. I'm not
mhm,
saying don't get rid of the community, but make time to make friends in Australia, like make Australian friends or different accents. I had Chinese friends at the beginning. I had people from India as well that we used to go and take a coffee. Like, just I used to, drop off my children at
So
school and go
that's
and
off.
have a coffee.
So that's often people's first pressure test, is to sort of
Yeah, that's for sure.
to break that little
Yeah,
circle of
yeah,
comfort, to get
yeah,
out of that zone.
yeah. My English skyrocketed when my kids started school, because I found a group of friends, a New Zealander, and my best friend now is Australian.
Mhm.
And we started having coffee once a week for an hour. And sometimes I didn't speak. Sometimes all I did was listening to them.
Listen.
And then I started to build confidence, and then I started to talk back, and even I went back home and I just researched what they told me. And so what the heck this person told me, and I will put a Google it, and then, oh, this is what it means. And then I started building confidence and asking questions, because I was within friends, and
Yeah.
what this phrase means, or what do you mean? And I started understanding the language a lot more, because it's not about the words, it's about the context, the social
Yes.
context, and how do you use the language in a daily situation. So for me, the best way to do it is building a group of friends that you can hang with once a week. And then from there, I used to listen to the radio as well. Before, it was all salsa dancing in my
Yeah.
radio, my radio. And then I started listening to the radio. It doesn't have to be all the time. It doesn't have to be all the time, but you can listen to the radio every now and then, and understanding as well. It's still difficult for me to listen to the radio to some of the presenters. It's difficult to me to understand, but you have to keep doing it. And then I guess it's just, going out there and practicing, even though if you feel that there's always that nervousness of, talking back to people. But I think the best way to do it is just exposing yourself to as much experiences as possible to be able to practice and listen.
And so what's next for Keyma?
Well, Keyma, I have a lot of projects, like I guess little projects on the go. All I can say for me, I want to continue spreading the word out about Latin American food. I still think Australia, there's very little understanding of the food in this part of the world, or there's such minor way, like there's not enough restaurants, there's not enough information out there. So I wanna create this, I guess, more material to be able to spread the word in different ways. So I'm thinking content. I have a sneaky little project, maybe a book. I don't know. I'm just.
You're not going to start a Venezuelan restaurant with repes and tequeños or anything like this.
No, a restaurant, it will be in the long term. At the moment, all I'm doing is my private dinners, and I'm doing that, I guess, every 2 months. I'm collaborating with some restaurants around the city, Latin restaurants and some chefs, and then creating these, I guess, private dinners that people can get not only Venezuelan food, but Latin food in a different light, I guess, in a different way. And those dinners are really, really nice because we're able to talk about the stories about the food and talk about, the evolution of each one of the dishes I design, because most of them are made with local ingredients. I try to use local ingredients as much as possible, because as we spoke already, it's difficult to find some of the Latin ingredients that are, amazing, but, it's difficult to find them here. And I guess, I continue with my channel on Instagram. I continue, I'm creating some content for the following months, so people can try the recipes at home. I want people to, get to see that, I don't know, Latin American food is a lot more than tacos and tostadas, and there's a lot more diversity.
Tequeños, like
the menu, like tequeños. I made a tequeño recipe, which is super easy using puff pastry, and anyone can do it at home.
Yeah, I remember when I was living in Buenos Aires, there was someone always outside Plaza Italia selling tequeños, and I think they must have bought a house with the money that I gave them for tequeños, because I got addicted. I got addicted to them.
Really nice.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'll continue working around food. I guess for me, the most important thing is to do it in a way that it doesn't harm my family at the moment. Like it doesn't. So I still need to be there for them, and having a restaurant, it's a lot of work at the moment. So I'm working obviously around that. So the private dinners are the best in doing that, and I'm always. I also love connecting to people in a way. So when I do not, I'm working as a private chef, so I go to people's places and cook for them, and I feel that also sparks conversations. And I get to talk to them about what I'm doing, and when I present the dishes, it's a very much intimate experience as well. So for me, even though it's a lot slower than going and having a restaurant, because it's, one dinner at a time, it makes me feel more connected to people as well. And I get to, see the smiles from myself, and I get to get the feedback straight away. And it's, people always really happy. They feel it's very special as well. So I think for me, I'm all about love and connection.
So I will put those details up on the usual spots as well and so if people are interested in, trying some
Yeah,
authentic
hosting a dinner.
Venezuelan or hosting a dinner, some authentic Venezuelan food,
Yeah.
then they can definitely get in touch with you. But yeah, it's certainly that sort of Caribbean Venezuelan tropical
Yes.
feel is
Punchy,
very,
bold
yeah,
flavors.
exactly. And I think probably one of your biggest successes was towards the end of MasterChef, where you did, I think it was basically, you called it a Mexican dish, but I think it was pretty much a mixture of flavors from Latin America, really, with the watermelon ceviche and things like that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was probably pretty representative of your overall style, really. So,
Yeah, I think towards the end, I started developing. I wanted to develop like a modern style that is not, it's not so far away from what we see traditionally, but that incorporates other elements that are more, I guess, related to people. And that's why I thought, and it was fun. I like having fun with food as well. It was delicious. So for me, it's taking those techniques that are so amazing from Latin America and bringing them here and using whatever we have here to come up with something like
yeah,
it was an aguachile,
yeah,
a
that's
rojo
the one.
aguachile.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so,
yeah,
I think because of this, you've become like a fantastic ambassador for Latin Americans in Australia, because now people have a much greater awareness of the flavors and the food and the culture surrounding food from Latin America. And it's definitely something that's expanding and worthwhile exploring as well. And so it's something that, you know, people can use to actually help them learn language at the same time. And so we've spoken about some breakfast food, some brekkie food, some smashed avo, some arepas, some Vegemite on toast. But there are some other very Australian foods as well. Can you think of any very Australian foods, or maybe some that we've
Well,
stolen from New Zealand? Maybe
oh, pavlova.
Pav, yeah.
There's so much controversy about the
Oh, yeah.
pavlova.
And the other
I love
funny,
pavlova.
yeah, but I wouldn't make it in a fit. It's too hard for me, um, but it was funny because MasterChef started in Argentina while I was there, and
Mm.
and I started seeing all these pavlova everywhere, and I said, what the hell is going on? And then someone said, oh, they did an Australian special or something on MasterChef
Oh.
Argentina, and they had to make a pav.
Oh,
And
I thought
all
it
of
was
it,
an Argentinian pavlova.
yeah, and all of a sudden I was seeing pavlovas everywhere in Buenos Aires. I was like, what the hell is going on here? Smashed avo, pavlova, it was crazy.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
it is a very
I love
interesting way of,
pavlova.
yeah, it is a very interesting way of sharing culture. So
Definitely.
thank
Definitely.
you so much, Keyma, for coming on the show. Anytime you have a new project coming up, we will be interested in hearing about it and definitely helping you to promote it as well. So
Thank you, Glenn. Thank you so much. It
yeah,
was so fun to talk about,
yeah,
Australian
absolutely.
and obviously
Anytime.
it's the experience of living in Australia as a migrant, as a Latin American. It's incredible.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine any of the Latin Americans that are here. Like everyone, it's I guess have fun. I guess for me, tell them to have fun.
Yes.
Just
Que
enjoy the
chévere.
process. Mm-hmm.
Que chévere. So I look forward to
Severísimo.
yeah, chéverísimo. So I look forward to talking to you again soon. And for anyone out there that is interested in contributing to this show, then you can find us on Patreon. But from us here at the Australians Teach English podcast, the podcast by language learners with language learners for language learners, it's us saying nos vemos. Ciao.
Ciao.
For more information about the Australians Teach English Institute, go to australiansteachenglish.com or follow us on Instagram, Facebook and YouTube at Australians Teach English.